Welcome to Beyond Sport with Fiona Stewart. In this podcast, I chat to athletes, coaches, and industry professionals about their sporting journey and the lessons they've learned along the way. Guests range from Olympians to the everyday lover of sport, but the message stays the same. There is so much more to sport than what meets the eye. Make sure you hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts or follow on Spotify so you don't miss the release of each new episode. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Beyond Sport with Fiona Stewart. I'd love to hear from you. This week's guest is Australian track cyclist Gordon Allan. Back only a few months after his first Paralympic Games, Gordon takes us through the interesting way of how he got started in cycling. I'll give you a hint, it had something to do with his friend's mountain bike and a grassy hill. Gordon represented Australia for the first time in soccer in 2015 before later making his international cycling debut in 2018, posting a world record time in 2019. In this episode, Gordon takes us through some of the mental tricks he's learnt through his time as an athlete and how he implements them into life outside of sport. There's a few deep reflections in this chat, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I did recording. Gordon, can you tell us a little bit about your sport and how you got into it? I know that you did a few sports in your early years.
Yeah, so my sport is cycling, specifically track cycling is sort of my main event. I'm a para-track cyclist for the Australian cycling team and the New South Wales Institute of Sport. So my main event, or what I went over to Tokyo for, was the 1 kilometre time trial, which it's a sprint event. So it's 4 laps around the velodrome as fast as you can. Pretty quick event, and it's over fairly fast. So yeah, that's in short, that's pretty much my event. I do road cycling as well to sort of build up fitness, but mainly just do the track in terms of competing internationally. I got into cycling in a bit of a funny way. I sort of like most kids, I started riding a bike when I was sort of like 4 or 5, but I couldn't get off training wheels with my cerebral palsy. So like when my friends all sort of got off training wheels, I sort of didn't want to be behind, so I put the bike aside and started riding a scooter or whatnot for a few years. And it wasn't until 11 or 12 where we playing in the park with some mates, and my mate had his mountain bike and he dared me to ride his bike down at this grass hill. And I was like, all right, why not? I got dared. I'm like, I can't turn down dare. So I ended up riding his bike down this big grass hill, stayed upright and realized that I could sort of do it and that I had the balance. So I sort of, fell into cycling a bit late that way. For the next few years, I was just riding, I guess, pretty casually, sort of just for fun, had a mountain bike, sort of rode with my mates and that sort of thing. And then saw Paralympics Australia, they do these talent search days. Mm-hmm. So you can, it's like a sports draft where they advertise a few different sports. You can go in, try something, they might sort of advertise table tennis, swimming, stuff like that. But they had cycling there. And at the time, I enjoyed riding a bike. And I was like, well, why not ride a bike fast? Sounds pretty a bit of fun. So yeah, I turned up, did some testing, and yeah, they said that's something that you might be suited at. So I sort of slowly fell into the sport that way.
Oh, that's awesome. And you said that you kind of started off a little bit on the road. Was that just the way that the cycling evolution goes? You usually start on the road and then you make your way to the track?
Yeah. Well, track's a bit more specific. The track bikes that we have, they have no brakes on them, and they've only got sort of one gear, so you can't really ride them on the road. So your road bikes, your general bikes that you can ride a lot on, but you've actually got to pretty much buy another bike to get onto the track. So for most people that get into cycling, you start off on the road anyway. It's the more, I guess, more accessible avenue, and you can do a lot more with it. While track is very sort of narrow, and you can really only ride sort of on velodromes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they're kind of the two opposites in terms of road cycling's kind of a bit more endurance based, whereas track's very sprinty.
Yeah, there's a bit of length in there, but yeah, there's most of it is sort of quite short, sharp events, I guess.
Is it the short and sharp ones that you enjoy more, or it's just that you're naturally talented at it?
Yeah, it was a way sort of as after a few years sort of thing with the Australian team, with the para team, you don't get into the national team until you're 18. So you got to be minimum of 18 years of age. So when I finished high school, we sort of did a bit of sort of specific training and then some testing, because I wanted to, once I finished high school, I wanted to get in the national team, because I was 18 then. I'd finished my HSC. So we sort of spent a few months doing specific training, and then did like a bit of testing, and I was closer to the sprint events at that time than I was in the road events. So I was like, all right, well, to sort of get into the national team and then to get the support, it's probably best to go down this path first. So yeah, that's sort of how I fell into the track side of things.
Yeah, it's really cool that, you know, they were able to give you that support and like do the testing to find out what you're
Yeah,
good at. Yeah.
yeah, no, it was good because like we sort of weren't sure where to go, I guess, and it was like because once you get into the national team, then you sort of get picked up by the State Institute of Sport. But it's weird at the moment. You've got to almost make the national team before you get sort of the support by the state for the institute. So it was like to get there, we had to do that first. So yeah, no, it was a good challenge.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. Now, I understand that you represented Australia in soccer in 2015 as well. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah.
How is
So
that?
I
So it's
had
very different to cycling.
yeah. So I was playing sort of since I was 6, playing with my mates. My dad played, so like just naturally I played. And yeah, it was just like club football and whatnot. And through the para sports, they have like the national team. It's like a cerebral palsy national team, so a 7-a-side team, Pararoos. So I was sort of involved with them sort of pretty young, like when I was sort of 8 or 9 or 10, I sort of found them as like a state team. So started playing with them. And they had, yeah, in 2015, there was sort of, while I was playing for the state team with them, there was the opportunity to send over an under-19s team to these World Games. So yeah, I was pretty lucky to do that. It was a pretty cool experience over in England.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Do you happen to know? Because my first ever guest was Matt Holland. So he plays for the Victorian team, and I think he hasn't made a national team yet, but he's on the Vic team. You don't know him?
Oh, I know the name. I know the name.
Oh,
I know that. Yeah, I think I remember the name only because I think I'm mates with one of his mates,
yeah.
sort of thing from South Australia. But like we sort of when we have nationals, we all sort of all the teams kind of hang out and they all sort of know each other. When I was there, when I was sort of playing with them, so like yeah, you sort of know most of the guys, or you
Yeah.
know of them, I guess.
What a small world. Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very, very crazy. So you represented Australia, I guess, for the first time in soccer. Was there like a moment other than riding down that grassy hill on your mate's mountain bike that you were kind of like, I love cycling?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I think like learning, or I guess riding a bike at like a later age, it sort of like I had this sort of feeling that I enjoyed it. Like it wasn't something that I did since I was little. Like it was
Mhm.
something new and something fresh. So it was something that was like cool, I guess, and it almost gave me like this sense of like freedom that you could like get on your bike and go for a ride, and you can go for a few hours and you end up sort of whatever 30 k's away or something like that. So yeah, I don't think it like there was like a time I was like, oh, okay, I really like cycling. It just sort of grew, and sort of as I developed and sort of learned more about the sport and like got older, I like started to enjoy it more and more. No, there was no like real sort of turning point, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the just exploring your area and, 3 hours and you could end up 30 Ks away or whatever, because that's what actually my partner likes is that you can just ride left or right and you end up in a different place and you can take almost a different pathway each time. So yeah, it must
Yeah.
be a cycling thing that you can just explore a little bit quicker, but also not as fast as a car. So I guess you can absorb a little bit more on the way.
Yeah, well, I guess it's similar. Like, I guess it'd be the same sort of feeling as how people like just going for a drive, something like that. You go for a drive to a spot, or you like ride, you go for like a scenic route, you go for a ride on a scenic route. It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, except when you're riding, you're getting the endorphins and the fresh air.
Yeah, you get a bit of that, but like it's the same sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah, another thing about cycling is the crashes. Has there been any like significant crashes or injuries like along your journey?
No, luckily enough, knock on wood, so far I've been pretty good. No broken bones. Like crashing's a part of the sport. Come down a few times, but it's like just a few scars and a few cool stories. But no, nothing too seriously so far. Luckily enough.
Yeah, oh well, that's good. I know the first time I crashed my bike was last year, and I like cried for a week about it, about my little scraped up knee and my scraped up hip. So no, it's definitely not fun when you come off a bike. I don't know how kids do it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, try something I try and avoid.
Yeah, at all costs. Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
kind of get scared in terms of like when you're on the track, there's no brakes? Because I like to hold on to my brakes when I'm riding my bike.
yeah, it's something like at first that like yeah, you sort of need to figure out, I guess, and it's like a weird feeling. It's kind of like the track bikes are like I don't know if you've been on a spin bike in the gym, where
Mhm.
it's like that where it's sort of fixed. So to slow down, like you're only going as fast as you're pedaling in a
Yeah.
way. So to slow down, you almost have to like backwards push
Mhm.
in a way, or like add resistance. So yeah, like that is the break, I guess. But you learn, I guess you learn to be more agile, or you learn that you're not going to be able to stop. So you've got to almost just like turn out the way, or yeah, not put yourself in a position where you can't get trapped. But yeah, it was definitely like a big learning curve.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I could do it. I think it's a certain skill set that you need.
But yeah, it took a while.
So you've had some other significant moments. I know 2018 was your first, I guess, Australian team. Like that was your first time representing for cycling. So that was at the Track World Champs, and you were 19 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, it would have been 2018. Yeah, it would have been 19.
What was that
That was
like?
over in Brazil. Very eye-opening, very eye-opening. I think, like, sort of looking back on it now, I was very fresh to the sport, I guess, and I think it like showed in like my performance and sort of how I felt. It was like sort of the first time I'd been away from my parents for like a month, because we had our, like, you'd leave home, we had our training camp in Adelaide for 2-3 weeks, and then we went over to Brazil, and it was like 35 hours flying total time. So it was like, yeah, all very new. And then, so yeah, it was a cool experience, but it was like definitely an eye-opening experience of where I need to be if I want to sort of make it as an
Mhm.
elite athlete, I guess.
Yeah. And then was it the next year you broke a world record? Is that right?
Yeah, for a few moments. Yeah, no, that was like the first sort of, I guess, I had a taste of the world the previous year, so I sort of knew what I was up for when I came in a lot more prepared, and yeah, rode like a massive PB. And then like the way my event works, so it's everyone goes off sort of one after another. So
Mhm.
it's one person on the track at a time. And the fields for us are usually at least sort of 20 or so 18 to 20 guys at least. So depending on where you're seated, depends on sort of when you go off. So like that year I was seated like third last sort of thing. So like I had to watch all these guys go before me, and then I raced, sort of break the world record, and then sort of beat the guy who rode after me. So second last, he didn't beat my time, but then the guy that rode last sort of just hit me.
Oh.
So it was like just at the end, but no, it was, I guess, like my best performance at that stage, and I was, yeah, really happy with how it went overall.
Yeah, well, you still bet the world record and you held it
Yeah,
momentarily.
yeah,
Do you still
yeah.
get a certificate for that? Like, do you still get, the fact that you did beat the world record?
Um, it is acknowledged, and then I think it turns into like the Australian record anyway. So I don't think you don't, I don't know whether they give certificates anyway, but it was like acknowledged as a world record time. But then, yeah, it's set as the new Australian record.
Oh, that's still pretty cool. Like, what an
So
achievement.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, no, it was cool, because like when you race, like they've got like the big like boards sort of at the track, like your big digital sort of scoreboards, I guess. And so like when you ride sort of thing, they're always placed so as soon as you finish, you can almost look up and sort of see your time.
Mhm.
So it's always like, at times it's like a bit of a sort of shock moment, because I'll have like a WR next to your name, or you'll have your time. Like, so yeah, like noticing the time and that sort of stuff, it was pretty good.
Did you know at the time? Because I came from a swimming background, so we have the same kind of scoreboard there, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. You finish the event, and you look up, and you're like, oh, I either went the time I wanted or I didn't. Did you know that like the world record time was within your reach, or were you just like completely shocked at how big the PB was?
You have like a target time going in.
Mhm.
But I think sort of, I guess, underperforming like the previous year in my first worlds, I sort of didn't really know what to expect, but like I wanted to sort of redeem myself. So I had a target time in mind, but yeah, you never know with the event, like, because it's pretty much just, it's in a blur. Like you don't really know whether you're on schedule or not, because no one's like, your coach isn't reading out your times. It's pretty much just like 4 laps and them shouting at you to go
Mhm.
faster. So like you don't know really how you're performing until you look up afterwards. So it's not like you sort of have a gauge of where you are. So yeah, it's always like a surprise moment either way.
Yeah, true, true. Have you ever had like, I guess you mentioned the year before, those times where you look up and it's not what you want, and you just like, how do you handle that? Because I know personally I didn't always handle that the best way. How do you handle like that moment, especially when there's people around?
I think like I sort of like to like keep to myself, I guess. Like I'll sort of come off the bike, and you just sit down, and like you try not to think too much about it. And I think like I try and like debrief with like my coaches and sort of with myself within the next day or so. and then sort of move on, because I think like for me it was sort of trying to, when these events would happen or when I was learning from it and sort of finding out what worked well and what didn't, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that's what you're told to do as a like, that's what I tell kids to do as a coach, but it's not always what I executed myself. So
Yeah.
it's good that you're able to, try and put those plans in place, even if it doesn't work every time. Like, having that structure does help.
Yeah. It's easy to say, like, in the moment, I guess you're disappointed, but it's hard. Yeah, like I remember like times I've just sort of sat down and you just put the towel over your head in the pits and just sit to yourself and think for a few minutes. Because like, what else can you do?
Yeah, well, I guess I was kind of lucky.
But
I was in a water sport, so if I was crying, no one really noticed. So has there been any other like significant moments other than Tokyo, which we're going to touch in a moment, but has there been before, I guess this year, been other significant moments in your sporting journey?
I think probably just making that first national team was
Mm.
probably like the big one, because like as I said, we were chipping away. Like I was training, I guess, part-time, like through school. Like you don't really train as full-time as you can because you're at school most of the day, and then you got homework and whatnot, especially with HSC. So like when I finished school and started uni, I was like, okay, I'm giving myself 12 months here to make the team. This is what I do. And like me and my coach, we just sort of chipped away at it for 12 months. And it was a goal that I'd had previously for almost probably from like maybe the second year I got into cycling. Like once I found that it was an elite sport, was to one day make the national team. So in a way, it was almost like a 6-year journey rather than like a 1-year journey. But yeah, to finally sort of know that I was in the mix internationally and that I was actually competitive and that it could be a chance that I'd go. I think like, yeah, my first team was probably the best experience bar Tokyo.
Yeah, so let's get into Tokyo. So what was it like? Like, how's the qualifying process go? Like, what was it like to qualify?
So I came in pretty well with timing in terms of like I came in, I guess, at the start of the Tokyo cycle. So I think 2018 would have been like the first year that Australia could accumulate points. And the way it works for the cycling is that your country, like Australia, will compete at a world championships or a World Cup. And the better they perform, the more points they get. And then the countries with the most points, then it gets like divvied up on how many slots you can get for males and females. So Australia, we're pretty strong. I think we're in the top 5. So we did pretty well at like worlds and all that sort of stuff leading in. So we were given 7 male slots and 5 female slots. And then it's pretty much up to Australia, like the Australian coaches, to choose whoever they want. So it's not like, okay, if you medal in an event, you're guaranteed. Obviously, if you're a world champion or if you're a strong athlete, your chances are higher. But it's not like you are guaranteed a spot by how you perform. Like you don't earn a spot in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's different to like the swimming, I guess, because the swimming you have a qualifying time that you need to meet, and you need to like usually place 1 or 2 to be able to get a spot.
Yeah, no. So like the 10, I guess when they divvied it down, or when they sort of narrowed it down to like the 10 guys going into 7 slots, all 10 had previously medaled at the World Championships, all were doing times that would be medaling.
Oh no.
So it was like, yeah. So it was really close. So like just before, because we had Worlds in Canada in 2020, just before COVID hit, we were actually over there, and this thing, COVID, started happening, and we're like, well, it's this is like, they would like just started spreading in America and sort of, I guess, coming out of China, and they were like, sort of, oh, you might want to be worried about this here. You should wear a mask on the way home and this sort of stuff. And we're like, okay, this is a bit weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had Worlds then, and then that was like 2 months later, like COVID sort of was in full swing. So we didn't have another competition after that. So that whole from like, I guess, March 2020, we were sort of expecting some idea of the team. And then they sort of just delayed it till pretty much they didn't pick a team until June this year. We were sort of, we had events sort of nationally, but it was just about almost like training for an extra 12 months without really knowing. Like they had a short list of teams, so they probably had, I think it was like 10 or 11 guys and 7 or 8 girls sort of thing. So they narrowed it down a little bit. But if somebody had put their hand up and put in a good time, then it would like they might get added into the mix. So yeah, the whole qualification process, it was pretty, I guess, pretty stressful.
Yeah, it sounds stressful. What was it like when you found out you were on the team?
I guess it was like a relief, like a big relief, because like I'd had an idea like a couple months sort of out from when they picked the team. I was like, oh, okay, you can start to sort of think about how everyone else is going and your chance of the medal, and you're like, okay, well my strengths versus their strengths and whatnot, and I was like, all right, I might be above this guy, but I'm not above this guy, and this sort of thing. But yeah, like once I got picked, it was like, okay, I can actually focus on going rather like you were focused on going, I guess, from the whole way, but it was like 100%. There was no doubt in the back of the mind, and yeah, it was just like I guess it was just a relief.
It would have been, a huge relief. What were you thinking when you were leading into it? Because obviously, like the Olympics went first, so you kind of knew what to expect in terms of like the village life. Were you a little bit like apprehensive about it?
Yeah, so we like the cycling itself. We weren't actually in the village, so we were so the velodrome was like 2 hours like southwest of sort of the village. So they put all the countries in like a sub site. So I think like a sub like the cycling countries would be in like a sub site village. But the Australian Olympic team, they decided to pay for their own hotel and sort of stay separate just because of COVID protocol and whatnot. So they were still in a hotel around the corner, but they weren't with the other countries. So we did the same as them. So we got a lot of information from them on what was happening. And I guess, yeah, watching like the Olympics, we were like worried as it was like starting, like, well, what happens if there's a lot of cases? What's going to happen with us? So I think, yeah, we were pretty surprised that I think most people were that like there wasn't a lot of cases and that it kept well contained. But yeah, definitely like leading in and watching those guys sort of do it and compete. It was definitely nerve wracking. Like I watched the Aussies race, but I didn't really watch the cycling just because like I'd be watching it and I noticed my heart rate was like just pounding because I was like, this is gonna be me. I'm gonna be racing on this track in a month. And yeah, so it was I guess, yeah, good to watch, but also pretty nerve wracking.
Yeah, it would be. Were you guys like in a camp? Because was Sydney in lockdown then? I think Sydney might have been in
Yeah,
lockdown.
yeah. So myself and there's another a track athlete here as well, Amanda Reed. We train together sort of as the two sort of sprint athletes in New South Wales, and we almost in a way got trapped here. I guess they'd had plans to have a camp in Brisbane, like a pre-departure camp, and then yeah, when the big cases hit and sort of spread, it was pretty interrupted. It was pretty chaotic for a few months. Like I had to get exemptions to get to training, to get to the gym, to get to the track. So there was like sessions or weeks where I wouldn't be able to go to the track until the new exemption was updated. Like every time they, I guess, implemented a new rule or a new restriction, I'd have to wait a few days before I could get back into training because I'd have to get like a piece of like a sort of approval to go back. So yeah, there was like times where I remember, I think like about a month out, I moved into an apartment so I could keep training. But then once I moved into the apartment, I couldn't it was about half an hour from my place. I still couldn't train. So I was in this apartment for like 5 days away from home, but still not being able to like get into the training facilities. I guess it was pretty chaotic. But the support network and the staff that were coaching me, they were like pretty good. So I'd be doing a session, whether it was at the gym or at home, they'd make something up anyway. Like I ended up doing gym in my garage and I turned my bathroom into like a heat chamber
Yeah, I think
to
I
acclimatize.
read that like you were putting heaters in the bathroom.
Yeah. So we were doing heat acclimatization to get used to being over there and racing and that sort of thing. So the way that we usually do it is there'll be like a heat block and we'll be at the Institute of Sport and they'll sort of have like a heat chamber or they'll be in like a sauna and you sort of do sessions like that to acclimatize. But with that being shut, we sort of had to do it at home. So I went, they sort of gave me all the things I like, told me what I needed to buy. So I went to Bunnings and bought like 3 of these heaters, sort of plugged them in the bathroom and sort of had my bike in there and it got to like 36, 38 degrees just doing these efforts in like a small bathroom. So yeah, it was pretty chaotic.
Oh gosh,
But
well you got to do what you got to do to get ready.
yeah, exactly.
That's a crazy lead up. I hope, your next lot of games might be a bit easier.
Yeah. Hopefully, fingers
what
crossed.
what was it like, I guess, in terms of like your own separate cycling village? You guys were not in the main village. Was it a good experience still? Like what was it like at your first Paralympics?
Yeah, I think it worked as a favor. Like it felt a lot like a World Championships in a way because you could go there and you could like when we go to Worlds, we're sort of in our own hotel anyway. So you could go to your rooms and you could just sort of be by yourself and focus on what
Mm.
you need to do without sort of having countries around you or like the fear of getting COVID, I guess. In that way, it worked really well. And I think like hopefully there'll be many more years to sort of experience a village life when it's a bit more safer. But like I think for my performance, and I know a lot of the other athletes are saying the same thing, especially not being able to compete overseas for 18 months anyway, like the whole mentally, the side of like having people around you and the pressure and all that sort of stuff, to be able to just be, I guess, comfortable and sort of with those that you know, it was good to, I guess, yeah, get the best out of myself.
Yeah, true. It's a bit more of a homely environment, less like the
Yeah,
biggest event in 4 years, more like world champs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and like you, as soon as you'd sort of like leave the hotel and you'd go to the village, or you'd go to like the track, or you'd go to where you're racing, you'd see all the other countries and you'd see the media and you'd see how big it was. But then you could go back to your hotel and like it just felt like the hotel was like it was bigger because like we had like there's like a media sort of room in there and whatnot, and like people doing interviews with Channel 7 and that sort of stuff. But it kind of just felt like a sort of we were spoiled in a nice hotel. So yeah, like you could sort of, I guess, lock yourself away if you thought that you were getting overwhelmed by everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like it was almost, yeah, a benefit, especially for your first games. And you
Yeah,
didn't have to deal with the cardboard beds.
yeah, that was a bonus too. We actually had we the hotel that they chose was like really really nice, and we sort of got a bit of an authentic feeling, I guess, towards Japan. So like we got some like sort of authentic food. Like the rooms were yeah really nice and sort of different. So like we got to experience, even though we couldn't really go anywhere, we got to experience a little bit of like I guess their culture, and they put a show on for us just before we left as well, which was nice.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
fantastic. It's
it
almost
was
like you got
cool.
a better
Yeah,
experience.
yeah. Well, we because I didn't do the road events, so I went because it was you have to do for the cycling, you have to do two events,
Mhm.
and then similar to the Olympics, they were like shipping everyone off as soon as you pretty much finished. So there was like a midweek or a mid games charter flight back. So we were on that. So or I was on that. So I sort of flew back and stayed in like this hotel that was just outside of Tokyo. There was like a pre-departure hotel with like the Paralympics Australia sort of staff, and they actually sort of let us. We were like had 3 days before the flight, so we were going in the village each day. So we sort of got to experience a bit of the village in the end, which was cool. Like we could sort of go in there and sort of hang out with the other guys. But yeah, I guess it was yeah good to have the best of both worlds and sort of hang out in the village for a bit and then go home.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like, yeah, you did get the best of both worlds. And it
Yeah,
kind of has crossed into my next question, which is like the benefit sport has provided you as an individual that's kind of transferred over to other avenues of your life. So has there been something or a few things that like you've learnt from sport that have like transferred over and helped you in your non-sporting life?
yeah. I definitely like. There's definitely been a couple. I think like probably the main one, as like most athletes would say, would be like time management and like just balancing like your life, I guess, outside of sport because like we like I train sort of I'm on the bike 6 days a week. I got 3 gym sessions. Sort of when it's like ramping up on top of that, and I try and manage like a social life and like hang out with family and friends and that sort of stuff. So I think yeah, like just balancing sort of uni. I'll do a part-time study at uni. So to balance that, it's good. Like I found that like leading into Tokyo, I had like the first half of the year, I decided to just study one unit because like it gave me, I guess, something to focus on outside of the training. And so like I knew that I had something else to do. So if I had this homework or if I had like this assignment I had to do, then I knew I couldn't like procrastinate to do the training session because I knew I had to get to this assignment, and vice versa. I knew I had to get this assignment done because at 4 o'clock I had to be out for training or something like that. So I think it helps with like the structure and sort of help me structure my day and like be an athlete, but also have other commitments. Like I think I know athletes that sort of just train, but I think yeah, for me, I like to have both because it like gives you that structure and it gives you like something else to do, I guess, and something else to fall on if like training isn't good. So if I'm stressing about a training session, I can go and do some uni work, or if uni's sort of stressing me out, if I've got a big exam, I can like get on the bike and go for a ride and clear
Mhm.
the head. So yeah, I think definitely that side of things has been really helpful.
Yeah, and having the both of them, like I swam through most of my uni degree. And yeah, it is exactly that. You kind of get to balance it out and go, oh, like I can't focus on this assignment. And so you'll go and train. Or vice versa, you've had a really bad week of training or something. And like you said, it's just the fact that you can go, oh, well, at least I'm doing good at uni.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like because I feel like cycling, like at times it can consume so much of like what you're thinking of, and you need something else to think about. Otherwise, you're just gonna if it's all going well, then that's great. But if it's not, then I guess you feel like everything's going bad if your dominant thing in life is going bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's good to have like other stimuluses, I guess. But I think like as well, like that kind of leads into the other thing that I found was like I used to sort of through high school, I used to get like really stressed out. Like for exams, like I was bad, like I would like get really nervous. I wouldn't sleep the night before, like just like high school tests and whatnot. And it sort of started with uni as well until I like I guess made the national team and sort of started competing internationally. And like the tools that we use to like with the sports psych to for myself to like balance, I guess, the pressure to perform and that sort of things. It is sort of I've used it to I guess sort of keep calm and sort of not stress out about exams or prepare adequately to not need to stress out. So to use like that sort of mindset, things like if I'm like stressing out for an exam or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, sort of like the exam the next day, then I'll think, oh, well, it's definitely not the competing at like, I guess at a world championships or now at a Paralympic Games, it's definitely not as stressful as that. So like it helps me put things in perspective. Like, okay, it's just another exam or like I've been in much more stressful situations. So if I can deal with those situations and get the best out of myself, then why can't I do it like in everyday life?
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh, that is good. You know what? You are the first person to actually give that answer. And I really love it because I learned that a little bit from sport as well. It just helps, give you that reality check and go, well, if I can do this, then of course I can do that. And yeah, like exactly, I couldn't have described it better myself. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Like I think I sort of it was something that just came to me gradually. Like I was sort of just using the same. Like it wasn't easy, but like you use the same sort of tools and techniques, I guess, that you'd use to like put yourself in the right mindset. And it's really the same thing. And it's like just like that was probably one of the big things that I'd learned from my sports psych was like it's not going to come naturally, and you've just got to like chip away with it and practice it. And like the more you do it, like the better, I guess, the better you'll be at it. It's like another skill. It's like training. It's like everything else that you do.
Yeah, it's like a mindset muscle is how how
Yeah,
I describe it. And
yeah,
like you,
yeah,
every
exactly.
time you try, even if you fail, you're getting stronger at it until you go,
Yeah,
okay, well, I'm getting it 4 out of 5 times now. Like, how good's that?
yeah, exactly right.
You mentioned you were studying. So you're studying sport and exercise science. What made you want to do sport and exercise science?
I think like I enjoyed like PE through high school, like that sort of thing. I enjoyed that side, but I think as well, like, I just since I was like little, I sort of just enjoyed sport. It's like whether it was like soccer or whatever, doing like school sport. I just enjoy that side of things. And then as I got older, I guess, and going through high school and then sort of getting into elite sport myself, starting to learn about like the science side of it and like what makes a person tick and how to improve yourself and sort of why your body works in a certain way, I guess. I just found that really interesting. So like when when I found out it was a subject or something that you could study at university, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I found like it I guess gels pretty well. Like I've learnt things from my uni that I use in my training and sort of I've learnt things from training that like will go into uni and be doing like a practical and I'll be like, I've done this before, this is easy. So yeah, there's like definitely a lot of crossover, which is cool.
And does it help you learn it? I know I did a Bachelor of Sport Development. So it's kind of like the mix between sport management and like exercise science.
Yeah.
And when I was like able to do coaching or even like my training myself, like you said, it's that mix. You kind of like, oh, this is why we do that. Do you feel like it helps you like learn
Yeah.
things quicker?
Yeah, definitely. Like we've had sort of assignments where you've had to like write a gym program or stuff like that. And that's when like, oh, okay, I've done this. So I guess this is how it works. Or like you can transfer, I've done this in cycling, so it must be that it's sort of similar in another sport. So that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely, I guess they've definitely learned from each aspect of it.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have like an end goal where you want that degree to take you, or you're just trying to see where you fit in it?
I want to do like more studies. So I want to either like sort of go. I'm not too sure. I guess like I haven't finished the course yet. Like I'm in my sort of last year. I've only got I think five units left. So I'm sort of just chipping away at the end of it. But I think like after placement, I'm not sure whether I want to do like more study and go through like pure physiology side or going to like the biomechanics side of it yet. So I'll have to sort of see, I guess, see what these final few subjects are like and what placement's like and what I like to do.
Yeah. I didn't even know
But yeah,
when I finished my degree what I was going to end up in. So
yeah,
you kind of just find your way.
yeah, exactly. We'll have to see because like I don't think I'll be able to work full time with training anyway. So it's like trying to find something that I guess is flexible. So whether it's just sort of slowly studying and picking up another degree, like a master's in something, or finding like a place that I can work at that's understandable and flexible with the hours. Yeah, like I guess that's for future me to deal with.
You can worry about that in next year or the
Yeah,
year after.
yeah, exactly.
So you gave us a good gem before about like how doing sport and study helps you balance and it complements each other. But is there a lesson that you've learned along the way that you'd want to share either to your younger self or to someone out there?
For me, probably like the big lesson that I learned was like if you've sort of got a big goal to like break it down and sort of like chip away at it because like if you for myself like the events that I do like we have one worlds a year so we're training 11 months of the year to race once a year so like my goal or one big race a year so like the big goal is to perform at the world championships every year or to make the big team but you can't just have like that one big target 12 months ahead of time because you're going to lose focus or it'll feel like it's too far away. So I think like the lesson that I learned was like you sort of have to break your targets down and you sort of have to like set smaller goals for yourself and like as you tick off the smaller boxes where you reach those smaller goals then it's sort of like building yourself up and sort of improving and I guess helping you get to that bigger goal. So like whether it was I guess whether like you could use it for kids that are in school or like if you're aiming to go to uni or you're aiming to go well in that test is to like chip away at it and set yourself a small target to maybe sort of go well in the practice quizzes or something like that and sort of go well in this and then like that'll set you up for the next level. So I think yeah, just trying to don't get overwhelmed by the big goal and sort of set yourself the small target or if you're feeling overwhelmed, yeah, don't get sort of caught up in the big goal and just like build yourself towards it.
Yeah, I really like that. It's that stepping stone progress. And you've got to take the first few steps before you can reach the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good one. I don't think we've had that one either. Look at you. That's awesome. I really like that lesson. Another part, I guess, of this podcast is, and you'd probably see it, how important sport is, yes, for the individual, but also like the benefit it can have on the community and at a community level. Have you been involved in anything where sport's been used as a tool to help the community?
The RAS have like they're sort of in the past few years they've really sort of been involved in mental health and that side of things. And I've had the opportunity to in the past 2 years work with two of the programs that they've had. So they offer for athletes each year they offer like a program with sort of a couple of different sort of mental health organizations. So like the first year I applied and I worked with like Lifeline for a year. So like we went out to all these like regional towns or schools and like chatted to them about us and about how athletes also go through the same mental health issues that like everyone else does and that even though we're put up in this limelight that we're all the same and that we all have like these daily struggles. So like I did that sort of the first year and that was really cool because like we went out to Broken Hill, we went to all these communities and we sort of like spoke with the kids and they spoke to us and we sort of heard their stories. So yeah, I've been involved with that, which was like really cool. And then last year there was an opportunity to do it with the Black Dog Mental Health Institute. So I was a part of them and that program was going out and talking to schools, sort of local schools. So like delivering a content and delivering a program about sort of balancing I guess your daily mental health and dealing with like it was presented to kids from like year 9 to year 12. So it was about like the stress of sort of, I guess, growing up and sort of developing into an adult and those sort of things. So like we used our, I guess, sort of shared our tools that we learn as athletes and how we use it in daily lives and how that we can, I guess, transfer it in how they can use it in their daily lives as well. So yeah, that's been pretty cool to do.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing to like discuss. And I like that you mentioned it, that elite athletes like are at the end of the day just humans, and the thoughts that everyone has about, you know, maybe being anxious about a university exam, well, you have that too. And though you have it to compare to Tokyo, like you still get nervous about those things. And yeah, like just to say, and I think we need to maybe normalize, and I think maybe the last few years we have started to, is normalize athletes don't need to be put on a pedestal and have that pressure if they do break down. Like it's okay because we all do, and have that safe space, you know, for elite athletes to talk about their feelings and their mental health without. And I guess it is changing. Like it might have been 10 years ago where they would have been seen as weak, whereas we're having like Olympians pull out of the gymnastics team because of mental health. Like I love that happened.
Yeah, like I think and then like just showing them that like just because I guess that their problems or what they might be experiencing isn't like it's a big deal to them, even though they might not think it's a big deal. Like sort of I guess sort of maybe like a world championships is a stressful situation for us, but it's probably in their world their most stressful thing. It might be at the moment might be sort of something going on at home or something like that. Like it doesn't make it any better or any sort of like it doesn't, I guess, downgrade what they're going through. So yeah, like it was definitely it's like a cool experience to, I guess, chat to them like one-on-one afterwards and that sort of stuff as well, and just say like, hey, I've been in the same boat as you. Like I like not, I guess, like that sort of I understand or that I know what you're going through, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and it helps the person. I think any mental health issues, like I know I've got anxiety, but it helps to know that there are people out there that, you know, have felt similar feelings.
Yeah.
And to be not alone and not the only one who's experiencing that, it does it does help.
Yeah. And I guess like it shows them that if we're going there and if we're sort of sharing our story with them, then it encourages them to, I guess, share their story with whether it's like a friend or a family, just encouraging them to like speak out, I guess, if they want to.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing work. And it's a good space to be in, I think. And I think especially, I don't know why athletes have always been put in the strong category in terms of like they can't speak about it, but it's when athletes are speaking about it, it breaks down those barriers and it does make it a bit easier for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
So my last question, it's a loaded one. Are you ready?
All right. Yeah.
Where do you see the future of sport?
Oh, all right. Well, I'll go parasport because like I reckon that's like sort of where I'm in. Like that's sort of my sort of area. It feels like over the past, I guess, sort of few years, it's really grown. Like you saw this year, like I remember watching the Rio Paralympics on TV, and it felt big. But this year's one, like sort of, I didn't get to watch as much of the coverage being over there, but it just felt like it was sort of in terms of like media attention and like the reach that I got sort of outside of it, like beforehand, the messages that I got from people, sort of friends that I like went to high school with that hadn't spoke to for a few years. Like I guess the awareness and the growth of the sport is getting a lot bigger, and like the coverage that Channel 7 had and some of the airtime that we got, it was pretty surprising. And I think it showed that I can't remember who started it, but there was a fund that was started for like the equal payment for the medals, and within like a couple of weeks, they'd almost like peer pressured the prime minister into giving out equal money. So it was cool to almost see that like I guess the country was behind us. So to like watch it grow that way, and like I've had messages, or I guess myself and other athletes, we've had messages, and people are like, oh, what can we do to sort of help like improve your sport or help grow your sport? And I guess it's like most sports, it's just sort of getting people to watch and engage. So like to see the reaction from the public and how invested people were in the Paralympic Games was really eye-opening. And I guess it's like you don't know how big. I think like the gap between like it used to be like the Olympics and then the Paralympics was like the after show. And I think they're slowly getting sort of closer towards the Olympics in terms of like the event as a whole. I've been sort of had like conversations and like discussions with other people, and they're like, will it ever sort of be one event? We don't know. Like, you don't know, but like there's positives and negatives, I guess, of that being one event. But I think, yeah, like the gap and like the attention, or the media attention that we've got has been really, really unreal. And I guess it shows people that we're just athletes that happen to have a disability. We train as hard as everyone else, I guess, if not more, because we start from that step behind everyone else. So yeah, I think it's exciting, and I think it's a good time. It's a good time to be in the sport.
Yeah, it is certainly exciting. And I know the moment when ScoMo announced the equal pay, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like this should have happened 10, 15 years ago. But like the fact that it's happened now is such a huge thing, especially for kids like coming up into the sport, like seeing you guys on the TV with equal coverage, like that was, I think, such a big thing. I know from a swimming background, I don't know if you know Ellie Cole, or if you know of Ellie Cole, the swimmer.
Yeah, I know the name, yeah.
She grew up in the same swim club as I did. So everyone knew who Allie Cole was down in my local area. And I used to try to watch even the nationals, to be honest. And they would switch off the coverage and go to an ad break when her events came on. And I used to get so upset and frustrated. And this is back, years and years ago, like 2012. Yeah. And I used to get so frustrated because I was only watching that night for her and it wasn't even on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So even like the fact that, I guess like Amazon Prime had the Olympic and Paralympic trials for swimming, but like the fact that everything was there together and they didn't cut anything out, like you got to see all of that, was so good. And even the coverage that Channel 7 had for the Paralympics, like it was phenomenal. And like this backstory, like you got to know the athletes behind it. And yeah, the whole country was behind you guys.
Yeah. Like I know when we got over there, like sort of they said, because we had like a media liaison there through Channel 7, and they were saying like even before it had started, like all the snippets and all the build up, they said like the demand was far exceeding what they were expecting. So like they sent out all these things, and they sent out questionnaires, and we had to fill out all these bits and pieces. So when we were all racing, they had like all this information on us, which I think, yeah, as you said, like it made the viewing seem like they were invested in what they were presenting, and they weren't just like, okay, here's such and such racing, and now we're going to cut to such and such. They were actually invested in sharing, I guess, our stories as athletes. So yeah, and I guess like I remember like as they went on, and like during the first week, they were like, they've just sort of exceeded all the coverage that they were expecting to get, and they were putting on more and doing highlights and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a good step towards the future as well. Like, I think, yeah, like you mentioned before, they're coming closer together in terms of equality, and I can't see it going bad. Like, I can only see it getting better.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see whether I'm still competing by Brisbane, like 2032. It'll be interesting to see what happens there regardless, like what Australia can do. Like it'll be, I guess, just even like Paris in 3 years' time, whether like the goal is, I guess, that each country picks up from where the other country sort of left off and continues to grow and continues to, I guess, provide opportunities and provide like the next step, I guess, for the athletes coming through.
Yeah, I think it's certainly bright, and it's certainly exciting. And I'm excited to watch how far you go now. Like now that I know your story, I'm invested and I'm cheering for you. So you've got a supporter here.
Oh, that'll be good. Cool. That's funny.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and your insights. Like you've come with some new gems, and I really like that. It's been over a year of the podcast now, and you've brought something new. So thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me. It's been pretty cool to have a chat and I guess share my insight and share some stories. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Sport with Fiona Stewart. This is a completely independent podcast that has been created to share the journey and lessons of top-level sporting professionals, but also your everyday lover of sport. If you liked this podcast, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review and share it with someone who you think would also enjoy it. Until next time.